Hello, this is Sade Camille, and this is another episode of the From Her View podcast. I just know we're super excited. We're back at it again. That's a different episode for a different time. But one of the things that I wanted to come back with is one of my favorite things to do, which is the audio bangers. So we're in our, I want to say this is our fourth audio bangers, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys because I do think that this is a really great and powerful book. um it was something that, like, once I got into it, like, I couldn't get enough. It was the first book that I didn't even get to finish it, and I already was like, "Oh my god, brings the past. This is just too good." And so I have completed it. I have completed it for a while, so this has been on my to-do list for a while. But I was like, let's come back with a bang. Let's do what we need to do. And here I am, and we're going to be doing our audio bangers series. And this book that we're going to be going over is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So I'm super excited to jump into this because this man's story, it speaks to me in such a way, but it speaks to me in a way of, like, I feel seenish, right? I don't necessarily have the same life experiences as him, but I can see different correlations of my life, which I'll talk about. That brings me kind of like full circle as a way of looking at it from another person's perspective. It's very hard for us to get perspectives on life situations because we're in it. It's very hard to see the full masterpiece when you're focused on a 1 by 1 inch square of the masterpiece. And so it's super difficult for us to see, like, the beauty of it. And one of the things that makes it so wonderful, to me anyway, is that, just like life, right? We all go through something. We all have a story, and it's just beautiful to see God intertwined in everyone's story, because he is intertwined in our stories, whether you believe in him or not. He is very much intertwined in our story. So it was very, like, warming my soul just to see, how life could have been different for him, and how he might have started his journey with a completely different perspective, but he making ended his journey seeing that one of his proudest things is not necessarily all these things that he's accomplished, because he's done a lot of things. But one of his main things is that, like, he wants God to be proud of him, for him to have left this earth completely empty, doing everything on the checklist that God had set out for him. That was one of the things that he strives to do the most. And that was something that I was like, dang, like, that is a mindset that we all should share. And it's so easy to get caught up in the rat race, the day to day, everything that we, go through. We're human. This is life. And not to say that we should compare ourselves to another and being like, hey, this person did this, and this. Because quiet is kept. Like, I've done a lot of things in my life, and I'm barely 36. And so it's crazy for me to think about all these different iterations, these different versions of Sade, who she is now, the things that she learned. Look, things I learned 2 days ago that I'm like, dang, things I learned like 40 minutes ago. And I'm like, dang, like, where, like, oh no, this has got to change. And that is something that we all have to aspire for, that self revelation. And so, if you've been listening to the podcast, our last series was Check Yourself. before you wreck yourself. And it was very important that we do take a look at ourselves, do a little bit of self-assessment, because you can continue to self-assess yourself. It is certain things that I'm like, okay, I want this result. I'm doing this thing. I'm tweaking things here and there, but I'm still getting a negative end result. Like, why is that? And really just shedding a light, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that. You need to be doing this. And really not losing sight of what's most important. And I'm really excited to share this audio bangers with you. One of the things that I wanted to say that I was like, I cannot forget is when my book comes, it my audiobook will definitely be in a mirroring format of David Goggins, because that was like chef's kiss, like the cherry on top. It was so good because he had obviously a gentleman reading the book, but it was in a podcast format. So it wasn't a traditional audiobook where they just have a person there, they're reading the book, maybe with some inflection and everything like that. It was more than that. It was actually podcast style. So the reader is reading the book and also answering questions to David Goggins. So he's being interviewed, intertwined with his book being read, which I absolutely loved because we got more gems that paperback wise we would not have gotten if we did not listen to the book. So I'm really excited to get into that. So, if you don't know who David Goggins is, you probably have heard him. He's, got motivational, blips and blurbs on a lot of if that's things that you follow, of a lot of like Instagram pages or like TikToks and things of that nature. So, just going through the book, one of the main inspiring things was that he was very heavy set. He spoke in the book about, being a very overweight, obese man, and he worked at a job killing, exterminating bugs, and he really wanted to join the Navy. And he worked so hard, not being able, like, having a little bit of learning disability and whatnot, and really wanting to join the Navy, and actually lost a lot of weight in a very short amount of time, doing like basic math. So like doing a lot of calorie deficit with a mixture of intense workout. So that's like a mind over matter thing. But he does start at the very beginning, which is origin stories, because our origin stories do matter. I, for one, have been prejudged many a times on my appearance, the way that I carry myself, how I speak and talk and everything like that, or what I have or what I don't have, and all these other things. That's what people do, but they don't know where I started. They don't know my upbringing. They don't know what I had and what I didn't have growing up. They don't know all the amends I had to make with, you know, my childhood, with my mother, with my father, and where that brings me out today. They just see the product of today. And so it's really eye-opening to see a person be very transparent and talk about, like, yeah, my father was abusive. David Goggins talks about his father being abusive. They owned, I want to say it was a skate rink slash like bar in it. I want to say it was. And that his father was, an alcoholic, abusive. He kept them there all night. And his mother had no means of taking care of them because the father was a breadwinner. And she was in a position where she couldn't, she was we call it like financial abuse. Like, she didn't have any source of income for herself to kind of like leave when she should have left. She ended up leaving, but like leave sooner than that. And so he talks about that. He actually is from the Midwest, grew up in Indiana. He's, Illinois' cousin. So he grew up in Indiana, and it was just talking about, you know, being of mixed race, being called the N word, growing up, and how that kind of like molded him. So it was one of the things where it's like the girl that he was dating, I want to say he ended up marrying her, that her father called him the N-word, and he ended up joining the family. They did eventually get divorced. So that is just a little bit of his story pre him joining the Navy. So he's joined the Navy. He's finally lost all this weight. So like with the Navy, their you know training camp, Buds, is called Buds. He actually went through Buds training like 4 times because it was that brutal. Like he talked about like them having to run everywhere, like miles everywhere, so miles to the mess hall to eat, because they're training for the Navy, so like being in the water, being able to build up their endurance for that. While in Buds, for his fourth, and I want to say it was his fourth time, because like it was his last time at it, like he had to get through it or he was not going to get through it. And he actually had broke both of his ankles during the course of his time being there. Okay, broke both of his ankles. He had so much mental determination that he was like, okay, I'm gonna, duct tape my ankles. I'm gonna, put them in like 2 tubes of socks and duct tape those, and like, and got through Buds, in that condition. So I was like, man, this guy is crazy, you know. And he talks about like, yeah, that was one of that was a crazy thing that I did in my life, and it was, for me as a reader, as a listener, I'm just like in astoundment, because it's one thing to be a woman and have because we go through pain every month, um if we are able to go through pain every month, because we of that, giving birth, women do have a high tolerance for pain. With that being said, I have never knowingly broke a bone. I have broken a bone, but I've never knowingly broken a bone. And I don't know what the pain of breaking a bone in an area in which I actually have to use continually. So this isn't your ankle. This is like I have to, and he's not just like, okay, walking. He's running. They're carrying backs and boats and all this crazy stuff, running in sand, like mud, like all this crazy stuff. And he's in this condition. He's able to overcome that. He moved up to the ranks eventually. Actually went through some other armed services like special ops and things like that, because the he began to fall in love. I gotta get her, I gotta get it type dog mentality that being in Buds gave him, being in the armed services gave him, being in the Navy. And so that was something that he was always trying to achieve, another level of mental toughness to push himself to another level. So from the last podcast where I was talking, or not the last podcast, but a podcast before where I was talking about the cookie jar, which comes from this book, it's when he did the, infamous 100K, or should I say 101K race. This part for me, like, this is the part in the book, and I wasn't even nowhere near, I probably was like a quarter of a way through. So all that stuff I just talked about before in summarized form, like not even a full quarter, say 20% of the book. Okay, it's 20% of the book, and we get to this 100K race, and I'm just like, this man is crazy. At first, I was kind of like, oh, like he might got it, because he did go through buds, because that's was what his mentality was. He was like, oh, and buds, we used to run this amount of time for this whatever, and da 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 da. So he's doing it mathematically or whatever. So he's thinking about it that way. He's like, oh, I've done drills and trainings, and this should be easy. Then he came to the realization very quickly, once in it, that those activities, he actually used different muscle groups. Where this 101K race, you're using one muscle group the entire duration. And so this was the point where I was just like, I give all kudos, respects, props to this man. And this to me was like, wow. And even he said, he was like, yeah, man, that right there, that was like the most difficult thing in life I've ever endured in life. Like, out of everything that I've been through, that was the hardest thing, like the most difficult thing. And there's so many different factors in there that, like, oh my gosh. But in this instance, he's doing the race. He was just like, hey, I'm gonna go to Walmart, get some running shoes. I forgot what he called it, but it basically was like Ensure, like he had some like Ensure protein drinks or whatever. And he met someone that he knew that gave him some crackers, and he had a lawn chair, and he had his wife with him at the time. And that was his starter pack for this race. So he was completely unprepared. He did not do any training for it. He was just like, hey, spur of the moment, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And he talks about, doing it, having his body to the point of fatigue where he is urinating blood, defecating on himself, like completely out of it. And he had to hide it from his wife because he didn't want his wife to be like, no, you need to stop, whatever. Like, he wanted to do it because his whole reasoning for doing the racing and everything like that, like, he didn't want her to stop him. Like, he really wanted to, like, do it. So he talks about like how it was so painful, how like his mind was getting away from him. And so he remembered when he was a kid and his mom had a cookie jar, and he was like, there would be different kind of cookies in there at any given time, like a cream sandwich cookie, a wafer cookie, a sugar cookie. It'd be so many different cookies in there. And so for him, in order for him to get through this process, his cookies were moments in life where he endured something, where his mind overcame something. And that was fuel for him to like mentally step outside of himself and be able to achieve the race. So from that cookie jar, he goes to, going through buds so many times. He goes through, um, you know, going through growing up and being abused and being called the N word. He goes through all those things where, it was very difficult for him to learn. He had a learning disability, and, seeing his mom being abused, like he goes through all those things, and he makes that like fuel to say like, hey, I've been through worse things than this moment right now, and this moment will not break me. And when he said that, like, that is something that I I use. It is okay, and I say this all the time. It is okay to be let down, to have your feelings hurt, to feel some type of way about any situation. It is okay, but you cannot stay there, because when you stay there, you cease to produce. And he refused to stay there. He refused to not produce the outcome that he came there to achieve. It didn't matter where he placed. That's not the point. This was him against him. And that is something that inspires myself, where it's me against me. I can't. I can't look at you. I can't look at you because your journey in life is not my journey in life. What I'm trying to accomplish is not necessarily something that you're trying to accomplish. And that is okay. 1,000% okay. But it also has to be a real reality of something that I understand, and I do everything in my power to make sure I get there. I'm actually going to, expound upon it at some point, in a different episode that I had planned on doing. But it's instances where I'm in the gym and I'm like, I can't do this, or when I'm faced with a situation and I'm like, man, I can't do this. Like, this is hard for me. Like, I don't, I can't get past this. I have to remember my situation of where this is. So, like, him going through this race, I have to remember when I went through my race in that toughest point in my life. Matter of fact, I probably got like two of them. But one of the toughest things that I had to endure in my life going through that and living every day on the other side of that is fuel. I say it at the end of every podcast for a reason. We have survived 1,000% of everything that was sent to destroy us. We've survived it. Okay? It's not by our will alone. It's definitely God all up and through that. But if you read your Bible, you will know that we still have to do the work. Okay? Faith with works is dead, baby. So we still have to do the work. Like, he had to go through this race in order to achieve all these other things that he was able to do to be where he's at today. He had to. And there's no cute way to get there, you know? Um, it's kind of off on a tangent, but not really. Like, it's almost like when you become a Christian and you think that like life is going to be sunshines and rainbows. But being a Christian, it literally means Christ like Christ, Christ like into. So you are not him, you're like him. It's almost like when I lived in Memphis and I wanted White Castles, they had crystals. It was like White Castle, but it was not White Castle. It was like it, but it wasn't the real thing. Close to it, but not exact. But one of the things that you have to realize is that the life of Christ is a type and shadow into what life would be like for us. Yes, we're gonna do great things, miracles, provide, heal people, help people, change the world. But we're always gonna have naysayers. We're always gonna have haters. We're always going to have adversaries. We're always going to have temptation, and we're always going to have death to our flesh. That's going to be a part of it. So that is one of the things that I absolutely loved about that, because that is something that I kind of exegeted from this book in knowing that, okay, what does this mean to me? Because it means very different things to other people. And that's the great thing about, having a podcast. Express what things mean to me, and it either jibes with you or it don't, and that's okay. It's from her view. So then, you know, he actually passes out, urinates more blood, defecates on him, completely unconscious. He actually talks about how he had to do another lap because by the 100th one, he was delirious, and he ended up doing another one because he wasn't quite sure if it was 99 or 100. But he has collapsed, fallen out, um, completely out of it, covered in his excrements, and his wife had to pick him on up, scoop him in the car, take him to their apartment. I want to say that he said that their apartment was like not on the first floor. I think it was either the second or the third floor, but it was not on the first floor. And that he collapsed when he got there. He woke up, she had him in the bath and he had to like wash and bathe himself. And one of the things that I take away from that is like he accomplished it, but he didn't leave the situation without like scars or you know, um like without something. Like you have to think about how humbling it is because I know how humble it is for anyone to deal with your number one and your number two. So I know it's like a completely different thing, like to be a man and be in that position. So there's just so many things that we can extrapolate from that. But him going through that. So he ends up falling in love with running. Like running is his thing. And he continues to do a lot of races in various terrains, in Hawaii and things like that. So that by this time he has properly trained himself. He actually talks about how, you know, every place that he lived, he would he would get miles in every day. And he talks about like, yeah, there are times where I wake up and I do not want to run. But that's what discipline is. Discipline is doing the things that you don't want to do, but you're going to do them. You know, that's just is what it is. That's the difference between discipline and motivation. Motivation is when motivation and discipline unite, oh baby, it's magic. But let those two be on two different planes, discipline has to do the work. So really into running, got to that point where, yeah, like I said, doing a lot of races. He was talking about getting to that point where he actually got very sick again. Now, he's a runner. He's in like the best shape of his life compared to when he was like this really big guy, in the best health of his life. And he ends up having health issues and they find a hole in this man's heart. He has to get heart surgery. Like heart surgery. He had to have surgery on his heart, which is insane. Insane. So we're not even halfway into the book, maybe a little over halfway when we get to this point. He's probably on his second wife by now. He's had some kids in between there. So this is pretty huge. And this is coming from a person who has had to have like there's two organs in the body that should make you nervous if you ever have to have surgery on them, you know? And that is your brain and your heart. So I'm like here with him. Like I'm like, bro, I feel you because I unhad some stuff, sir, and I get it. And so for him to go through that builds up his stamina and continue to run. So by this time he isn't active in active service. He's working at a recruitment office, with all the new recruits into the Navy. And so that's what he's doing. And it was just so crazy to me that, you're in the best shape of your life. You finally got it all there and heart surgery. The point where he has like this mysterious illness, I call it. It's a mysterious illness because he goes to see several specialists and they can't for the life of them figure out what is wrong with him. They have absolutely no idea, no clue. But he is like he's barely able to walk, he can't see straight, having respiratory issues. Like it was a real bad. And then he encounters this guy, and told him, it's like, hey, like stretching. So he gets to a point where, okay, I've overcome this volatile childhood of abuse and negativity, and the people that are supposed to uplift me and nurture me are not doing that. I've overcame that, and now I get to a point where I'm doing them. I lost all this weight. I'm in this, the Navy, um broke my ankles, just trying to get through this. And this is something that I want to add, because in the audiobook, the reader asks, like, hey, like, how much were you making at the time? Now, child, they was making as much money as I paying rent right now. And I was like, that's crazy to like put your body through that and not be it. That's a whole nother story, whole nother topic. But I was like, that's insane. But doing all of that, running that race and being severely dehydrated and fatigued, and, you know, relieving himself on himself multiple times with blood in it. Like, you relieving yourself and there's blood in it, like, that's not good. Like, he even talks at great detail. It's running down his leg and everything like that. Like, going through that, training at the highest level, achieving that, and then you get a hole in your heart, having to go through that surgery, and then you have this mysterious illness where, like, you can barely walk. And I understand what that feels like. It is a humbling feeling. It is a humbling feeling. It is a sad feeling for you to know yourself in full strength, and to, in your mind, like, want to do those same things, and your body is like, no. Like, it's a humbling thing for you not to be able to control your body. It's like, I know my body can do these things, it's done it all the time. And for your body to be like, no, sit down somewhere. Like, that's super humbling. And to find out that it was because of stretching. So it all turned out to be that his muscles were so tight, so tense, so firm, that blood wasn't being able to circulate his body like he needed to, and that he needed to stretch. Now, baby, hearing that, because I used to be I'm gonna hit the gym, do what I gotta do, be peace and blessings, baby. I stretch. I do dynamic stretching before my workouts, honey. I should probably do it after, but because I was like, ain't nobody got time for that, for your muscles to be getting so tight that blood can't flow to them, and like, you could fall out. Something as simple as stretching. And so his story, obviously, there's so much to it, but audio bangers, we give you the highlights of it, that make it interesting, so you can hear about all the other things if you so choose to partake in it. But reading this or experiencing this book, the biggest takeaway was the cookie jar. Like, that is the biggest takeaway. Also, the whole mind over matter and discipline in the things that you can do. So I was kind of like tricked in thinking that I wasn't consistent, like a person. And I'm actually not. I'm actually very consistent, but I was not as disciplined as I could be in various areas and aspects. And it was so funny because we were at work, and me and my coworkers are talking. They're like doing a challenge, so they're actually doing like a Biggest Loser challenge, and I'm not partaking in it, because it's a bunch of guys, so I'm gonna let guys be guys. And that's not my thing, because I'm whatever. And one of them was like, I've done it before where I lost the weight and I was in really good shape, and he was showing us the pictures and everything like that. And then he said, every time it's a deviation in my schedule that really gets me. And that was actually my line when it came to working out. if there was any sort of deviation in my schedule, oh baby, I fell off. And one of the things that I can say is I'm extremely proud of myself because I think it's actually coming up pretty soon. Like I've been going to the gym now for like a year, almost. And I've had a lot of things get in the way of that. You know, jobs with different schedules, starting school, going through health problems, going through woman problems, relationships, failed relationships, and everything in between in the course of a year. Okay, on top of like being a mom, my kids' schedule, this and that, just me existing being myself was actually very difficult to maintain. But I'm actually extremely proud of myself because I can no longer use that as an excuse. It's actually not a good excuse anyway. It all boils down to discipline. And I also got to a point where it's like, as far as like my area right now, my area of contingency is not actually working out. It's actually the fuel, which is the food. Okay, you know what you want, you know what you got to get there, you know what it's going to take, and you've done it before. So now that's an area in which I need to be disciplined. I'm disciplined in making sure that I move my body, you know, 2 to 3 days out of the week, preferably three. I actually prefer five, but my schedule doesn't really allow that. But actually being more active, that's one of the things that, I want to do. That's perfect. But everything else has to be in alignment. And there's so many areas in my life that I created a great disciplined, structured routine for it, right? Because Atomic Habits, another book we listened to or talked about, it's all about the system. So I have the systems, but it's the difference between having a system and working the system. And that's something that I haven't been doing, which ties into the discipline. So it's time for me to make sure everything aligns with what I say that I want. And I really enjoyed this book because every example in here showed how he aligned himself with the things that he said he wanted to do or said that he was going to do. And what's great about it is he tells you this path was not straight. This path had hills and valleys. And so that's one thing that we also have to come to the conclusion about. You make the systems and everything like that, but you also have to make room for error. Honestly, at this point, very, very frustrated. And I've come up with, a couple possible scenarios and for me to still get to where I'm trying to go. But I'm frustrated in it that it's taking longer than what was told to me, than what was expected, and experience. The thing itself was very difficult. I didn't expect for it to be this difficult, but I didn't vet the situation properly as I should have. So that was an error on my part. So I'm kind of like reaping the consequences of that, which it is what it is. I'm going to this I'm going through this situation still determined, still fiery, still not defeated by what it is. I know I serve a God that as long as I have, you know, a fire lit about it, that I'm actively working towards it, He will make a way. And I just have to be there to say yes and do the work. So, this has been another episode of Audio Bangers Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I want us to have a takeaway that we have survived 1,000% of the things that came to break us. We didn't come out of it unscathed. We do have the scars. We do have the PTSD in some situations about it, but we live to tell the tale. One of the things that we also have to understand is that these things may have happened to us, but it is our responsibility for us to get to the other side. And that entails reflection, introspection, really being honest with ourselves. We cannot be held captive to our pasts, meaning we can't continue to live in the past and not completely move forward. We have to take into account of where we say we want to go. And I think about it this way, it's almost like it is a book. Our lives are stories. And the way that I'm structuring my life is that I know who the main characters are, right? Me, my kids, we main character energy. And there may be a person that's introduced into the cast that is, you know, going to eventually be a main character in a future season. Or they could be introduced to the cast as, a limited time special guest or one of those crossover episodes. But those people don't dictate the journey of the show. The show still must go on, and that is our lives. We can achieve everything that we want to. It's a mental game. Okay? It is a mental game. And I hope you give this book a listen. I hope you give this book a read. I hope you follow David Goggins on social media. Just hear some of his speeches, him talking. You'll really enjoy it because it's so eye opening to see that man before you and think that he went through all of this stuff and his posture is still, I would do it again. And that's how we should be. And that's how I am, honestly. I've been through a lot of things. A lot of things. It was so funny because I had a coworker and now we kind of like say it as a joke. And he was like, I had came in and I was like, "Are you guys talking about me?" Because that's how, extra people be. And he was like, "Girl, you're not that interesting." And I was like cracking up to myself and I was like, "I actually am very interesting, bro. I am very interesting. The stories I could tell you, it's just completely insane." Um, but I know that what I'm experiencing is a tale that can unlock someone else. Just like his story unlocked something. And I hope that it unlocks something in it for you. It lets you know that, hey, this is not going to be easy. This is going to be every single bit hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be the most tough thing that you've ever done in your life. But we are so consumed by this comfort culture that you already have the leg up. Being willing to go that extra mile, that already gives you the leg up. People are trying to play a game where they're trying to do as least as possible to get them as most as possible, and that's just not how the nature of this world works. No matter how many times people try, it just never works. But this has been another episode of the From Her View podcast with me, Sade Camille. And we went through audio bangers of Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And until next time, bye.